So I just watched this Channel News Asia interview with Lee Shulin, the former lawyer turned recruiter, and it really pissed me off. Here's someone who spent years in law firms now telling the country that fresh graduates like many of us bring almost nothing useful to the table.
What skill are you talking about when you have literally just graduated?
And that we lack this magical quality called
Hunger.
She described how companies she works with are letting go of Singaporean workers and bringing in people from Malaysia, Vietnam and the Philippines instead. And it's not always because they're more skilled, but because they are hungrier. And with AI doing due diligence in a matter of 45 minutes instead of a month, she says a warm body alone just doesn't cut it anymore. Now I sat there getting increasingly irritated because this hit on something that's been really bothering me for a long time. Our entire generation, the Gen Z generation, was sold a very clear promise. Study hard, get that university degree, and a stable white-collar life in Singapore will follow. We were never asked to go into trade schools or vocational paths because those were looked down on, so the system pushed us towards degrees as a minimum requirement. And now the same ecosystem turns around and acts like this credential that we've worked for doesn't count as real experience. It feels like we did exactly what society demanded, only to be told that we're still not good enough, and on top of that, we're not hungry enough. Now let's get into the core of this reductive argument. These are deep structural problems. They're not some kind of personal or generational character flaw. Look at the reality around us. Singapore is one of the richest countries in a region full of much poorer neighbours. And companies are profit-driven. So of course they're going to hire people who are willing to accept lower salaries. And of course these people are willing to accept lower salaries because those salaries go much further back home. If Singaporeans could stretch that same paycheck to live decently in our insanely expensive city, you'd see plenty of this so-called
Hunger.
To me, this hunger talk is just code for wanting someone to do more work for less money while smiling about it. Newsflash, asshole! Humans weren't put on this earth to generate shareholder value or perform corporate loyalty theatre. We're here to live, sustain ourselves, and build lives for ourselves and our families. In a capitalist system, that means working to meet our needs. But in Singapore, this cost of living is brutal. We're expected to fake this endless enthusiasm through soul-crushing job application processes and accept terms that barely let us survive. And on top of all of this, we're going to get lectured because we're not being grateful enough. Meanwhile, the economic incentives clearly already reward bringing in cheaper labour from abroad. So I'm sick of this idea that we don't have enough motivation. We're just tired and refuse to participate in our own exploitation under this guise of hunger. Now, after this interview blew up, of course it did, I read this other guy's Substack article where he basically doubles down on Shulin's points and argues that affluence has made Singaporeans lazy, arrogant, and stupid. And he reminds everyone that Singapore succeeded in the past because we were cheap and hungry and willing to learn from others and outwork them. And now, our moats, education, governance, all of it are thinner than we think. He pushes the same tough love message that no one is coming to save us and that the government cannot force competitiveness. Now, parts of what he says are true. Personal responsibility is important and the world is fast and rapidly changing. But reading it just made me more pissed off. It felt like another example of people rehashing the same lectures while ignoring how this game has changed completely while we were playing for our generation. We inherited a social contract that worked well for those that came before us. Degrees actually opened doors back then. And now we enter an overcrowded, hyper-competitive market where the cheapest bidder often wins and living costs keep skyrocketing. And instead of actually having an honest discussion about wages and housing and policy, we get told that the real problem is that we're just not hungry enough. It's reductive and hypocritical, and the frustration that so many of us feel is not entitlement or laziness. I think it's a completely rational response to diminishing returns on promises that we were fed our whole lives. In my opinion, we need to cut through the bullshit. Humans weren't designed primarily to generate shareholder value. We work to survive and live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. If companies and commentators want to see real hunger, then pay people enough to actually build a life here without constant financial stress. Create genuine pathways that don't rely on undercutting workers from poorer neighbouring countries. I'm not saying that we should just sit back and complain. I admit that no one's coming to save us. But let's stop pretending that this anger is the problem. It comes from seeing the harsh economic realities and from refusing to play a game where the rules keep shifting against us. Until we shift the conversation to address those deeper contradictions with honesty instead of more lectures about motivation and character and hunger, it's gonna continue to feel tone deaf and out of touch.